I said, you probably heard me right there. LSU's team was held together by duct tape and super glue to finish the season. This is kind of the same scenario, but you know what? Doesn't matter. We're going to talk about coaches. We're going to do it now. We might sound like we're in a tin can, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Here we are. Let's go.
So let's dive in and talk about Stinkin Lincoln Riley. I never wanted him anyway, to be honest. No, look, I would have been very happy with Lincoln. It was very fun.
There was some different conversations, though. I mean, full disclosure, we had some of them on air, obviously, but it wasn't the overall 100% home run. Like, just, I'm talking about not in this room, but just around. Like, there was still like, well, the defensive issues. He's given up 54 points in any championship game scenario against SEC teams. 3-game sample size, but 54 points average.
Yeah. It's not
so
great.
There was that. And again, I'm not saying Lincoln's not a great coach, but even that one was met with a little bit of, is that really going to work? So,
well, but doesn't that kind of show you how potentially what will the other announcers be met with, right?
That's what I'm getting at. That's where I'm getting at. So there was never going to be a coach unless it was Nicholas that came over here that it was going to be 100%. So we understand that. But if you trusted in the process before, you still have to trust in that process until a hire is made. And then if that hire is not what you were looking for, then you can riot.
Yeah, and I guess that's interesting, right? Where is your trust in the process? And by the process, I mean Scott Woodward, because that is what this all comes down to. And as I laid out during headlines, because of the Napier angle, nobody has more to lose than does Scott Woodward. Like, this man has spent an entire career, an entire adult lifetime building up this stellar resume, this impeccable resume, and now it's like it's kind of push all the chips to the center of the table time, Jake, and it's pretty wild. I'm going to be fascinated to see a few things. I'm going to be fascinated to see what kind of deal USC offered monetarily. Let's start here. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Jake, that people keep asking me, or in my first ever venture into Tiger droppings last night.
I saw that.
Which,
if you would have used Rambo GIF instead of
you don't
Arnold,
like, I know you like Arnold.
It's good. It could have been great.
Predator.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I probably love Predator.
It's a whole Arnold versus Sly.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because Sly's a little short bum, but that's fine. Anyway. Which, by the way, I really like Tiger droppings. Actually, it was great. I mean, it was not like I think I had fear out of it because I'm just self-conscious and I didn't want to read a bunch of threads, especially when I first showed up here. Like, I didn't want to read a bunch of threads about how I sucked, like the so sucked. Like, I just didn't need to plant those negative seeds in my brain because it's just the unfortunate part of this job. Positive reinforcement, you're like, okay, great, whatever. Negative reinforcement tends to kind of gnaw at you a little bit. But now that I went on there, I think I'm going to start going on there pretty regularly. It was fun. I mean, just a normal fun toxic, right? It's like the internet. It's just like a little LSU corner of the internet. So
I've never really done a deep dive, but I definitely have had some friends that will send some stuff.
Yeah,
Flynn and I did a full episode of people talking bad about Flynn and I on the radio, and we just read them out loud for 15 minutes and wheezed.
Okay, that's a good way to
how funny
handle
it was. But no, I mean, hey. There can be some good information there as well.
How about, speaking of Flynn, how about this tweet? So the Colada Show tweeted, like, is Woodward in panic mode or is he comfortable? It seems like Scott Woodward has a deal done for over a month. And then Go Sports replies, Matt Flynn said on OTB last week that LSU is going to hire someone, quote, no one is talking about. Hester, that's your feeling for being around the program? Flynn, no, I know it. Was Flynn being serious? I don't know. But I've been thinking about that a lot today, maybe. Matt Flynn,
insider,
noted journalist. Look, okay, but this does set up one of my points that I wanted to make today, Jake, which is there's a lot of people very mad at some accounts, some people for putting information out there that ended up being wrong, and whatever, that is what it is. My point is, as a consumer, we do have agency in all of this, right? Like, you choose who to believe and whatnot. And again, like believing Matt Flynn as a LSU insider, I would say that's a potential misstep, right? And so, yes, if you ran with some of these accounts or whatever, like if you let yourself believe these reports from accounts that, aren't journalists that have a track record of this sort of stuff, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you, right? Like when Pete Thamel tweets, Lincoln Riley, USC, that job could be done in 24 hours. That's real. When your favorite, and this is not a shot at these guys. If anything, I'm defending them, like, because they're not journalists, so they don't have to be like beholden to some sort of code or something. But like, if you chose to believe him, I'm just saying it's kind of on you, because we've been saying this entire time, you can't really believe anything, nothing's real, et cetera, and we won't know till we know. Now, Jake, here's the question: did LSU get played?
That's going to have to really be determined. I think that stuff kind of comes out after the fact, days after the fact, and we'll see exactly if LSU did offer him, what did they offer him, what does USC ultimately get him for. So all of that will come out. Like, we will know all that information, right? I mean, that's something that typically, like, it feels like you got played hard right now. But now you got to wait. You got to see what the information looks like. You got to see if LSU actually did offer him a contract, because that always leaks out.
So that's the next question. And I don't mean it's did LSU ever offer Lincoln? But again, I don't mean like officially offer. I mean functionally offer. Because as we've said multiple times, a school will never like put a contract in front of a guy's face and have him hand it back. They will always, it's just like Joe Oliva was able to say, we never offered Herman. Like, he was never the guy, right? It was always going to be. So I don't mean like officially, but do you think because.
Yeah, but they talk numbers. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I don't care about a piece of paper.
If I had to guess, I do think that they probably functionally offered Riley. And again, this is not from anything concrete. This is just from kind of reading the context of the situation. That's my guess, not fact. That is my guess that I probably think they did functionally offer Riley, and I think he took the USC job over.
Yeah, look, I would guess they did as well. I mean, there was so much smoke. There was hey, would you do it for 10 years, $120 million, whatever that number was, right? The reports have always been around $12 million. Would you do it, right? That without a doubt had to take place, right? I mean, there's just so much smoke, and so we'll see. We'll see what that offer was. We'll see what he get. Like, what he gets from USC is very important. If he took 10 years, $95 million, like, it's like, oh man, you got really played hard. Like, if you offered him more than that.
And I wonder, man. Now, I know that USC caught a lot of flack from like Cowherd and others being like they're not committed like these other schools are. So maybe they did just go balls to the wall and be like, no, we're going 12-5 or whatever it is. I think USC is private, so I don't know if they'll ever have to reveal this. I have to imagine somebody will figure it out.
Bruce Feldman will find it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, somebody's going to figure it out eventually. But we'll talk. Let's go to break. When we get back, let's talk about why USC over LSU, because I actually do see a few angles where maybe Lincoln would take less money, and we'll break it down next here on Off the Bench. Okay, so going to the break, Jake, we said LSU versus USC, right? Why Lincoln takes one over the other. As we talked about many times in this program, I did not understand necessarily, or I had to be like we had to have the conversation, right? I had to be kind of led there a bit as to why he would leave OU for LSU, because in a lot of ways I thought it was a parallel move. Now there's counter arguments there, like we've talked about. We've had those arguments, and then the main piece was because he's being offered $12.5 million, and so I eventually came around. I'm like, okay, you know what? That would make sense, right? If somebody's just going to give you a 50% raise, right? Because he was making 8. So like if somebody's going to give you a 50% raise, you're going to take that seriously no matter what. So then I was like, okay, you know what? It does make sense to me from that angle. When I look at OU to USC, that actually makes all the sense in the world. And again, it's not a commentary on like the USC job being better than LSU, because again, I don't know that the ultimate potential, I don't think it is better.
Yeah, I don't hold the USC job as high as some people, and I understand some of it is from nostalgia and from who they were. And I know you can't do this, and I hate when people do it, so I even hate that I'm doing it. But like, if you took Pete Carroll and his tenure out of USC, it's been a long time since they've had success.
Probably since Sullivan.
I mean, it's been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that I'm missing.
Robinson.
That's what I meant. Robinson.
Yeah, I know what you meant. So, but I understand like what it is and what it looks like and all those type of things, but you're leaving a pretty good situation in Oklahoma. Now the situation's getting murky here in a couple years.
Yeah, which is exactly
whenever it does happen.
And that's why, like you even said, like when we were having the LSU OU conversation, okay, maybe that's why it makes sense to go to LSU because the road's about to get a lot harder for OU. So again, I don't think it's a commentary on which job is better. I think it's a commentary on the context of the situation. And there are distinct advantages at USC in the context of the situation. And that is just simply the state of the Pac-12 against the state of the SEC. I mean, the SEC has 13 of 14 bowl-eligible teams. Mm-hmm. Look at the SEC West standings right now, which we don't exactly know how the super pod will work out. You know, the 16-team pod. We don't exactly know.
Again,
how
don't get married to the pod. The pod was put on a napkin. T-Bob, you were there when we were at Superior having dinner at SEC Media Days.
So we don't know how to break down, right? But you would think that Oklahoma would end up with a lot of these teams, right, in the West. So you got Bama 7-1 at top, Ole Miss 6-2 second. Then Arkansas, A&M, Mississippi State, they're all 4-4. Then Auburn and LSU, two teams that have won and or played for national championships in these last decade. I mean, you are talking about a cannibalistic group there, right? Just eating away at one another and savoring it. And then you look over at the Pac-12, and I mean, bro, the world's your oyster, dude. The world's your oyster. Utah's the dominant power that you have to overcome. Like Oregon, regardless of what you think about those schools, and they've done good jobs, and regardless of what you think about USC's potential is higher than those schools, right? So the path to a Pac-12 championship is way easier. Therefore, the path to a playoff is way easier. The NIL advantages of USC with just so much money being in that city, even if it's I
disagree with that, but we've had that conversation.
Again, I know we disagree. Like, people at LSU care more, but there's just a higher volume of people and money. So I think at the end of the day, it could be functionally the same. Way more passion here, but just more volume there, and it comes out the same.
Washington State has some of the most lucrative like NIL deals, and like
they're super passionate in Pullman. They are super passionate in Pullman. Like, they're crazy about it.
And they have tech companies. So I mean,
there's literally
and it's
nothing
small
else to do
for them.
in Pullman.
Exactly though.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, LA is so big.
Yes.
Like, I've lived in Southern California in my life.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
I know, but
about the NFL teams or about this. Like, it is a very small group of people in this huge sea that actually care about it.
So that's what I'm saying, though. There's enough, in my opinion, I think there's going to be enough runoff in the huge sea just because it is so big that, like, relative to its size, like in Pullman, okay, the NIL deal, that's basically everything, right? It's like they're maximizing what they have. LA's not going to maximize their investment because that would just be crazy because there's so many people. I do think there will be enough runoff where that will become an advantage for USC. So I think that's a potential advantage there. And, I mean, look, I don't really like California's culture all the time. It's probably just because I grew up in a different place, right? But if you got money, it's probably a pretty sweet place to live. And I think so. If you're going to be making $10 million a year or whatever, you could live in California pretty comfortably. I mean, you'll lose a lot of it to the state, but you'll still be living pretty chill. So, I mean, I guess I'm just saying that I get it. I get why Lincoln would be so attracted to the USC job. Is he kind of scared of the SC? If you want to say, yeah, sure, like, right, but it's also kind of a smarter move in that regard.
Yeah. I don't that part we disagree a little bit there.
On it being a smarter move. Why?
You're taking a chance on something that hasn't happened in a very long time. And you're taking a chance on something that was the bee's knees 20 years ago, but it hasn't, outside of one man, been successful.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some chance in taking this USC job, and the expectations there are high as well. Like, we know that. So maybe not as high as LSU, but they're incredibly high there as well. And you don't have some of the proof that LSU's had over the last 20 years.
It's fair,
and you're paying a ton in taxes as well. So
no, for sure, exactly, right. Sorry. But we'll see how much. We'll see. I'm fascinated to see how much USC offered him. because that will really tell the tale of this. It'll also give you an idea, Jake, about how committed USC is, right? Like, did they finally go all in and be like, look, we got money. Let's do this thing. Yeah. Like, let's pay this man $13 a year or $12.5 a year.
Getting called out for being a homer. How? The last 3 coaches have won national titles here, right? And 2 of those coaches aren't coaching college football anymore. And the other one is, I understand, like the GOAT. I understand that. The last 3. You take Pete Carroll out of USC, you got to go back to Coach Robinson for a time that they've been highly successful. They were awful for most of the 90s. They've been okay at best after Pete Carroll. That's what I'm talking about. The expectation's not going to change, right? Do you have an easier path in the Pac-12? Yeah, sure you do. That's anywhere outside the SEC West. But do you really want somebody in this spot, in this place, that doesn't want the expectations and the fight that it takes to win at a place like LSU? You're going to have as many resources. You're the biggest thing in town, right? You've got a recruiting hotbed that you're going to be able to choose from. You can tell me USC is the better job all you want. You can tell me that it's even easier. I just disagree with you. And the proof is in you have coaches that win national titles that are put into place, the last 3. I know we keep hammering that, but that's just facts. So
yeah,
over the last 20 years, you're not going to be able to convince me that it's a better job or an easier job. If it's easier, they would be the school with the 3 national titles. You would not be.
Yeah, look, I think you hit on a couple great points there, which is, honestly, you don't want the guy that wants to take that path anyway, right? And again, I'm not saying it's a dumb path. I think it's arguably the smarter choice. Not because USC's a better job, because of context, everything we just laid out. But Jake's right. You don't want the guy that is shying away from the challenge, because make no mistake, the challenge is going to be huge, right? I mean, the West is rolling. But that's no excuse. People are still going to expect you to be championship relevant. Just top to bottom, things have never felt stronger. Can we remember a time, and I know the West has had some years where it's looked pretty damn strong top to bottom, but can we remember a time where it's been more full feeling than right now? Because, like, Pittman just had kind of a mind-boggling year at Arkansas. Who would have guessed? They're supposed to be dead last. They're 3rd. Ole Miss, what? 6-2? What? 10 regular season wins? I mean, Mike Leach at Mississippi State kind of ended where, Dan Mullen, Mississippi State generally 10-2, but they pull, but again, the whole Leach thing remains true. Like, they can knock you out any day, and then they'll go lose to whoever. But, like, they got knockout. They got dangerous potential. I mean, and then LSU, the school that has the 3 natties in this century, they just finished dead last. So, yeah, the West is a murderer's row. But like Jake said, it does represent great opportunity for the man who is brave enough to take on that challenge. And I'll be very interested to see who that's going to be. All right. When we get anything to add, Jake, before we go out?
No. I mean, obviously, we can start to get in some names that are still available. Obviously, Lane Kiffin is a name that has been blowing up in the chat. Brian Kelly's name has come to me the last couple of hours. Yesterday is a name that started to really pop up. People calling me. Mark Stoops has been a name that we've heard over the last couple of weeks. So we can lay out some of the names, some of the potential candidates that are still out there. Obviously, there's still the potential of someone that's not been mentioned out of nowhere that name can happen as well. But these are probably the 3 names that I've been called and asked about the most. And, there's certainly some smoke around those 3 names. So we can start to get into that game as well.
If anybody else says Joe Brady in the chat, you're getting a 5-minute timeout. If Joe Brady becomes the head coach at LSU, I officially renounce my LSU fanhood. I will no longer be a fan. Unless they're good, then I'll be one. But, like, you understand what I'm saying, okay? No more Joe Brady in the chat. When we get back, let's close out hour number 1 of Off the Bench. The waters get murkier, Jake. As we got some information that is, it's definitely trustworthy in its source. I think that there's an element of, I'm always a bit cynical about information that actively works with a party's best interests at heart, right? Because it behooves both. It doesn't mean that it can't be true. Sometimes something can absolutely be true, and it just happens to be like good for you, right? So I'm just saying that, like everything else, take it with a grain of salt. But this would be about as good of information as I could think of getting. And it says that Lincoln was never offered formally or informally, so like never functionally, even like the conversation that we had earlier, and that he has not been a target since very early in the process. And this does actually line up with
very early.
Yes, two varies. The exact quote. But it does also kind of line up with some whispers that I heard last week about maybe some people who'd be in the know at LSU reaching out to boosters and basically like kind of chill on the Lincoln stuff a little bit, that he's never really been the guy. We'll reveal the guy when it's our time. So again, we're going to stay by our rules. We're going to take everything with a grain of salt, but that is it's about as solid information as I could imagine getting there, and just want to at least get it out there that it's being said that Lincoln was never offered formally or informally. So Mark Kiffin said you call J-Boy a liar. I'm just reporting what I got. I'm just reporting what we got sent to us. So interesting stuff there.
So I'm very curious now what your thoughts would be on a guy like we've talked about Lane, we've talked about Stoops, Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. I had someone very, very high up in our business call me late last night asking if I had heard this name because it was starting to come on his desk.
Dude, the streets are hot right now.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, look, I mean, initial reaction, yeah, I mean, can you really be mad at it? He's
92-39 at Notre Dame.
You're not going to find a coach with a better head coaching record than that.
263-96 in his coaching career.
Yeah.
Dates all the way back to Grand Valley State.
Continue to try to explore the messages that we got. But again, to end the hour, the big news was, at least in about as concrete information I think you get, it is now being said that LSU...
From a source that's going to be as close as we're going to get.
As we get, yeah. That Lincoln was never offered. We'll continue to kind of mine that, explore that throughout this week. Here's another thing that I'm seeing, Jake, that I don't agree with, is I'm also seeing a bunch of people acting like Woodward has already failed somehow in this process. And I do get where it comes from, but in the same way that I've constantly been telling people to guard against allowing themselves to get too high, also guard against allow yourself to get too low, right? Because we simply don't know what actually is going to happen or how this is going to play out. And we also just don't know and have no great way of knowing what the concrete truth of the matter is. Like, a lot of people tell you, oh, well, they just didn't look at Billy Napier because the booster said they're not going to do it. If that's true, that is malpractice, in my opinion. Like, that's bad business. Like, you have to vet each candidate on their own merits and then make your decision therein. So if you really did it out of ego and pride, again, yeah, that would be bad. But what about the world where Woodward evaluated Napier, said, I don't think he's the guy that I want, and then moved on? Sure, maybe LSU did, maybe they started talking to Lincoln weeks ago early on, and Lincoln said, no immediately, so you got turned down right away, and that's how you're like, it was never really real. Or maybe they kind of talked to Lincoln or looked at him a little bit, and again said, no, that's not our guy. So, I guess my point is, Jake, there is a world where this really is LSU getting down to number 4, number 5, they're striking out. But there's also a world where, no, this is just kind of the evaluation process. And the guys that are getting these other jobs are guys that you legitimately did not want. Now, the truth is probably somewhere in between, where you've missed some and then you've cut others off the list on your own, your own volition. But don't get too down on this thing being just over yet. I'm not saying have blind confidence either, but don't get too down. Let's kind of take things as they come here.
Who do you think that they've missed on? And that's not rhetorical. I'm asking you that question because obviously Billy Napier is a name that we talked about. We've talked about it for weeks, and I would say a bulk of our interactions on this show, we're not fans of Billy Napier coming to be the LSU head coach.
Well, I'm an idiot because I wasn't until he got Florida. And I'm like, I don't know.
Well, you talked about him. It's like you didn't realize he was that good looking. Yeah, exactly. So somebody else was on that arm. I get that part of it, but right now, who do you feel like they've missed out on? Of potential guys that have left, because Lincoln's really the only person that's left. Everybody else has signed to stay where they're at.
So I would say that I don't know that they've actually missed on anybody for sure. I think that what the general public is feeling right now is that
you've had 2 months.
That you missed on Napier, but maybe out of your own, maybe not missed, I guess, that you ignored Napier maybe to your detriment. Now, again, the reasons being are really important there, but I think that most people are kind of running with the idea that it was just like ego and no, we can't get a UL coach, right? So that you definitely Lincoln Riley, people think now just straight up like said no to you and kind of played you and chose USC over you. I don't think people are necessarily upset about Tucker or Franklin signing extensions, so I don't know that comes into play there. And then I think I don't think that people think that Aranda said no to LSU, but I do think that people want more interest in Aranda, and it seems like that's been a bit of a non-starter. So I guess in terms of being told no to, Fickle, I guess early on the story was always that Fickle was just like, nah, I'm good. I'm waiting here in Cincy or whatever, and then maybe just Riley.
Yeah,
I guess, but that's the big boy.
Yeah, and look,
Jimbo, and Jimbo.
Yeah, well, Jimbo that's a curious case, right? Because you always felt like he was going to have to say no 73 times, and he did come on record and say, I would be the dumbest human on planet Earth if I recruited this class to A&M and then ended up going to take the LSU job. And I understand that. And even, some fans would probably look at that and say, really? Like, that's a guy that you just beat with a 5-6 football team heading into that matchup that was just undermanned, and you're able to beat them, and they finished 8-4. You started the show. Can you give us that laugh, like, one more time? Thank you. So, that was a bulk. That was really the first 3 weeks was Jimbo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't know the truth of the matter there, right? But everybody says that was Woodward's guy, number one with the bullet. He's going to make Jimbo say no and then go everywhere else. The thing is, this is all one giant game of telephone. Everything is built on a kernel of truth that is then spun out into something bigger than what it is through the kind of grapevine. And it's so incredibly tough to discern how much of each one of these stories is truth and how much is just BS, and not even purposeful BS. I also don't think this is some situation where it's so Machiavellian, where you can control the news cycle. This was all a smoke screen. Maybe. To me, the Riley stuff has the feeling that it truly just kind of took on a life of its own as all the pieces started to align, and we just all accepted the $12 million offer. Nookie says Texas 8-4 University. 8-4, 9-3. That is a massive difference. But yeah, see, here's William Ivey. Woodward's Big Bang hires turned into a popcorn flatulence. But the thing is, what? Their hire hasn't been made. So how can we say that? Again, not too high, not too low. It's the old golden rule of film, right? When you go watch the film, you probably never do as good as you think you did, but you never did quite as bad as you think you did either. So let's let this thing play out a little bit here. Jake, who do you think OU hires?
Josh Heupel is very interesting.
Heupel!
And I know we got fired from there a time before, and some of the same people are still there. Look, we've seen a lot of people be fired from jobs, go somewhere else, and come back and be welcomed back. We've seen it happen with players. It happens. That man led them to a national championship, right, as a player. That lasts forever. What he did at Tennessee was remarkable. Yeah. That was an awful roster, and they were very competitive in the SEC this year. So that one, I don't think that's one where you have to worry about somebody that you're looking at, taking that job. Obviously, it's another big job. This is the ultimate. There's a lot of wolves and not a lot of rabbits. That's what this coaching search has been.
What I don't.
A lot of wolves in Florida, USC, LSU, now Oklahoma, Virginia Tech, Washington, and there's not a lot of rabbits.
Supply. Dwindling food supply and a lot of hungry predators out there.
Yes. Okay. That's what this is.
Is that a Joey Hester? I like that.
Probably is. I like that. It probably is, but I don't think you have to worry about that. I think Hypothetical would be their number one. I know Bob Stoops is a name, obviously, that's been for obvious reasons. Even Mark Stoops is for obvious reasons because of his brother Bob and his experience there, and Mark has been there as an assistant as well. So, like, that one makes a lot of sense as well.
Do we want to talk about Mark Stoops right now? Or actually, let's give you a little more room because I know you've had the felt tip out ready to go.
Like, I don't need.
I know you're not stumping for him.
No. I don't need the felt tip to tell you what I think about Mark Stoops. I mean, those receipts are out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone on this show. I've gone on my SEC show. I've gone on LSU Game Day Live when we're playing Kentucky, and I have told you what I think about what Mark Stoops has done in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I'm not sitting here championing for him to be the coach, and if he is, I think he's a hell of a football coach. He is, but I'm just telling you what I think. What he's done at Kentucky is highly impressive. Would people be happy with that? I understand what that would be met with. I do, but I think what he's done at Kentucky is very impressive. It's not to say that I think he's right now the right fit for LSU. Like, I would definitely need to see exactly how that would play out, but I think he's a hell of a football coach.
Yeah, so we can explore that a bit more coming on as well. Coming up next, let's talk about the ever-evolving troll levels of Lane Kiffin, because what we witnessed yesterday were, again, what did I say? I said put the Lincoln Riley postgame quote in the postgame quote Hall of Fame. I think Lane Kiffin goes into the tweet Hall of Fame yesterday because we have never seen an active head coach troll a fan base so directly as what you witnessed all day yesterday on Lane Kiffin's Twitter. So we're going to do it next here on Off the Bench. The balloon that was floated to us at the end of this hour. And we'll say it again in case you missed it at the end of hour one. I would say about the best source that I could imagine in all of this. Definitely this feels like the best source piece of info that has been sent my way this entire time is reiterating that Lincoln Riley was never offered. Again, I don't care about officially because we said you never offer the guy officially until he's going to go, right? We asked the question earlier, was he functionally offered? I answered it that in my opinion, all the smoke, all the context clues, I was like, I believe that he probably was kind of functionally offered. Again, a very well-placed source is saying that that is actually not true. That if anything, it's kind of what we maybe thought out loud last segment where maybe there was just like an early convo and it was clear that it just wasn't going to happen. And so that for weeks now, it's not even, there are no conversations. There have been no offers. And there was, again, never an offer really extended officially, unofficially, because it never really got past the kind of meet and greet portion of the equation. I am not saying that you necessarily should or like have to believe this because first off, whatever, I'm not telling you how to think. But secondly, again, this is a piece of information that would seem to work in LSU's favor, right? Because what's everybody saying today? That they got played, they got that they got strung along, and then he bailed for USC. So of course, it looks way better if you were never really interested in Lincoln. Right. So I get that. Now, as I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true.
It also feels like Lincoln wasn't terribly interested in the LSU job either. Yeah. It feels like it has a, hey, I'm going out to USC, and you can look at what he's done in recruiting, and you pointed this out again beforehand.
I don't think we've talked about this on air yet.
He's dominated Southern California in recruiting, now to Oklahoma, but it's one of those chess to checkers things, right?
Yeah, dude, he literally recruited he recruited for his USC class on Oklahoma's dime. And again, that's us connecting the dots. And everybody's talking about this. It's not unique to the show. But I was just looking at a bunch of, because the Oklahoma people are pissed at Lincoln.
I just saw here on SEC this morning, playing on in the studio, there's traitor signs all over Oklahoma's campus.
Well, bro, I mean, come on, dude. Lincoln Riley a couple of years ago, or a couple of weeks ago, is going after Dave Aranda for kicking a field goal, talking about the code of sportsmanship, when even after that, there were like countless examples that Baylor fans pulled up of Lincoln Riley burying teams like 70-20 in the final minute scoring points that mean nothing. So that looked ridiculous. So now all the Oklahoma fans are all like, where's this fall under the code of sportsmanship? And they're looking at a recruiting class that features guys like Malachi Nelson, 5-star quarterback, number 3 overall prospect in the 2022 class from SoCal, committed to OU, decommits yesterday. And he's not the only one. And it's only going to continue. Like there's like 3 or 4 or 5, I want to say 4 or 5 stars from SoCal that will now be out of Oklahoma, I'm guessing, and going to join USC. So like Jake's saying, for what it's worth, I'm not telling you what to believe. For what it's worth, I'm actually, maybe I'm being naive here. Maybe I'm being manipulated here. I'm going to take this at face value. I actually do feel like now that an offer was never made to Lincoln, for better or worse. And again, you call me naive. I'm not gonna tell you you're wrong. Maybe I am being naive, but this is the most concrete source that I can imagine. Which, if that is true, Jake, then that's not bad for LSU then, because that goes back to what I said about the Napier thing, which is, again, if you evaluated him and he wasn't your guy or he didn't want to come, that's fine, as long as it's not like ego or anything. In the Lincoln case, as long as you weren't like all in on him and then he said no, if the two parties never really got that far, that works for LSU.
Yeah, and I understand like a bulk of the chat is saying you've had months to do this, and you have, and I understand that, and I'm actually I'm right there with you, and I talked about it. I think it was last week. I was like, hey, it's getting close to the time where something has to be done, and obviously yesterday, with all the news that was coming out, Lincoln and Billy Napier and just the coaching carousel was hot, and you're starting to see people get impatient. And I understand that because of the signing period coming up. Now, you've got guys like, Austin Thomas is in there trying to save this class because this class is still ranked in the top 15. I think it's 12 last time I looked. You have 3 5-stars in this class, so you're trying to save it. But also you're trying to slow down anybody putting their name in the portal. Like, that's part of it as well. Mm-hmm. Now there's no, and I know Brad Davis is the interim head coach. I'm not saying this about him, but there's no voice because Coach O's in Destin. He told you where he was going. Like, his office is cleaned out. So if you're a recruit, like, you're trying to figure out information, if you're a player that's kind of on the fence about where you stand, and there's certainly, we could go over a list of players that are probably in that 50-50, what do I do? Do I stay? Do I go? Because, look, it's really incredibly easy to leave right now. You have to have a voice to stop the bleeding. Mm-hmm. And the bleeding's not bad right now. Right now, you've got a paper cut. But it can turn into a gunshot wound pretty quickly.
Yeah, that'd be so aggressive if your paper cut turned into a gunshot wound.
But, hey, you telling me it can't?
No, I mean, it could, absolutely.
3 guys go in the portal, 5 guys decommit?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
No, attrition is coming, like we said. You just got to mitigate the damage.
You lost a running back yesterday in recruiting. You've only lost, you've lost 3, if I'm not mistaken, so far since the news came out?
I believe so. We should probably get Shay on sometime and fill us in on what the current status of recruiting is.
Yeah, let's let Shay sleep a little bit. Well, he's probably not sleeping.
Well, I saw him at Superior last night. So
I wouldn't go out him like you did, but that's what I was saying.
I was there too.
So no, you were a hologram this weekend, sir.
Yeah.
We're trying to have conversations with you. Nothing. No return.
There's a reason why I have 200 unchecked text messages.
That gives me sweats.
I know, dude. I'm just garbage sometimes. And I had a weird, I don't know, just a weird weekend where I just kind of went very insular in a lot of ways. So I want to get 2 comments here. Mike Segura says, LSU coaching search has all been unsubstantiated rumors. All the lists of potential candidates were pure speculation. Nothing has come from Scott Woodward. This is actually true. Again, all the information we're getting is from boosters and people that are hearing things. I've not heard anything really sourced directly back to Woodward, Stephanie Ramp, Austin Thomas, except for maybe a couple little tidbits here and there. But yes, for the most part, and that's actually the sign, I think, of a well-conducted search, right? Because nobody really does know exactly what Scott Woodward has been doing, so he's been keeping his stuff very tight. And then another Daily College Football says, Woodward has had months, and a few crying emojis. The thing about the months thing, Jake, is, okay, you got months, but you can't make a hire before. You know what I'm saying? Like we've said, this is all timing based. And I don't know who you're targeting, but depending on where they're at, it's the Oklahoma State thing, right? Yeah. It's why we thought that result mattered on Saturday, and arguably it did, just it mattered to USC more. But if you're going after a current head coach who is having success, you can't announce him in the middle of the season. He's not going to leave his team in the middle of the year. So, yes, you've had months, but we always knew the hire was going to last until this point in the process. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just because you made the O move months ago doesn't mean that it wasn't always going to be December before we knew. And how funny is this? You did make the O move so long ago. Chris Pratt was texting me, and he just raised a fascinating hypothetical because LSU almost beat Alabama. What if O had beaten Bama, A&M, and Florida all in the same year he got fired? It's crazy. There's no real point expounding upon it. It's just a hypothetical, but like you were dangerously close to a 4-4 LSU team where 3 of the 4 wins were Bama, A&M, and Florida, and then the losses were what? Ole Miss, Arkansas, Kentucky. What a weird
Kentucky beat
world.
you like
worse.
They beat you more sound than anybody.
Yeah.
By according to the chat, a guy who can't coach.
I don't even give me. I can't go there. I can't go there.
Shouldn't say all the chat.
Yeah, no. Again, the mental gymnastics of trying to discredit anything resembling success while crediting only bad decisions is just wild. Okay, so that's a fun hypothetical. But what do you feel about what Segura, what Milton said about all of this being substantiated rumors that nothing has come from Woodward?
Well, I mean, certainly there is some of that, and that's what coaching searches are. It's done by the agents to be able to get guys the buyouts that they've gotten, and it's worked. It's worked for a lot of people. It's worked for Franklin. It's worked for Tucker. Reports are Aranda, and so it's worked. It's worked for those people. Is there somebody that LSU's probably said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And they talked a little bit, and at the end of the day, it quickly got shot down? Probably. Like you're having a lot of conversations. Mm-hmm. I mean, I sat there and talked with Scott for about 15 minutes after the game. He never, he was engaging in the conversation, but the phone was in his hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going off. So,
God, I thought, well, I would be the worst Scott Woodward ever. I can't even respond to like basic social text messages. I do not know how that man manages it all. That sounds awful. Sounds absolutely awful.
So, like, does the farther this gets down the road, does that tell you anything? Does that make you believe anything? Does that make you think that somebody that still is in a championship game, somebody that's still, with CFP implications? Because that's a very slippery slope. Now, you can have somebody that could be an absolute slam dunk or home run hire, whatever you want to use. But it also, we know 11th hour stuff happens in coaching searches all the time as well.
Yeah.
And that leaves you open to that gunshot wound going to just total.
So you're saying like, let's say you're going after a big guy that's maybe playoff relevant, right? And then at the last second, he's like, you know what, never mind, I can't make the move.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's a little scary. Because what if you said no to Napier, not because you evaluate him and found him wanting, but what if you're like, I think he's great. I just think that the guy that we got is going to be better. But then what if that guy bails? Yeah, I mean, that's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And with coaches families and just things that happen and evolve over days, hours, minutes, it certainly happen.
Well,
that's why you run the risk of going after the biggest targets.
I know what was it? I'm sorry, I got a little distracted there. I looked over it and there was just like some it was just hanging from your nose. It's gone now. It's gone. That was crazy. What were we talking about a second ago?
I don't know. Now you got me all conscious.
No, I know, and I didn't even want to bring it up, but I lost my train of thought. No, you're good. You're good. It was just out of nowhere. What were we talking about? Oh, the longer it goes on. The question you asked me. Okay, the longer it goes on, it could go either way, right? Maybe it means it's getting worse, but I don't know. It does also kind of mean that maybe there is some sort of ace up the sleeve type of guy. I personally, my dream, do not think it happens. But my dream, I do really like Matt Rule. But that's just me. This is nothing. Like let's just create some rumors. Actually,
let's go do it. Why not? Let's get it up. We got 747 in the chat right now. Let's go. But again, so like a candidate like that, if that's your guy, like he's still got a month plus of coaching. Even if they don't make a run, like he's still got a month of coaching.
Well, and that's why I think it almost can't.
Unless you're Bobby Petrino and leave in the middle of the night and call the Hogs while the Atlanta Falcons like, where's Coach Petrino at?
And again, you look at how that affected Petrino's reputation. I don't think Rule could do that. So, but that is the only way that I would accept Joe Brady coming back for sure. All right. When we get back, we continue to talk about some of these names, and then we can't get in Lane Kiffin stuff. Sorry, I got distracted there. Keep it locked here on OTB. So Lane Kiffin yesterday. Lane Kiffin's an interesting name, Jake, because I do think we keep asking this question. Okay, what could be announced or who could be announced that the majority of the LSU fan base would be happy with? And whenever I've asked that question to people the last couple of days, a name that almost everybody's answers like, I'd be happy with Lane.
Yeah,
Lane.
That's really probably the universal name that I've heard from LSU fans, and even people that aren't LSU fans just cover this conference or around this conference, that they've all kind of agreed on, but there hasn't been anything other than Lane being a fantastic troll that we've seen attached.
So that's where this gets interesting. If we want to, again, dive into, by the way, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube, but if we want to, again, dive into unsubstantiated rumors and whatnot, or not, we just want to look at, like, if we want to draw conclusions from pieces of information that we should not draw conclusions from. So again, I'm saying don't do this, but we're going to do it. So yesterday, Lane, 16 hours ago, tweets a picture of a Louisiana license plate, which is just very funny because this is when the meltdown started. He later tweeted a picture of the Caesars Superdome and had LFG with all exclamation points. And then, then he tweeted a Texas license plate. So maybe Lane was feeling like a little like, well, I thought at that point that he was feeling like, okay, maybe I'm going a little too far. Let's I'm going to throw in a Texas. We'll make it kind of more chill, jokey. But then this one feels like a shot a little bit. He tweets out a picture of the private jet with big game hunting on there and a bunch of emojis. Obviously, the reason why I say that it feels like a shot is what does everybody keep talking about with Scott Woodward, right? Big game hunter, big game hunter. It's the line that everybody's kind of parody, continue to repeat. The belief, again, I don't know at all if this is true or not. At all. Okay, this is just what a lot of people have said. But guess what? All these same people said the Lincoln stuff was real and happening. So, I mean, again, trust nothing. But everybody has said that Lane would absolutely take the LSU job, but that he hasn't really been considered for it. And if that is the case, Lane would know that. And so getting in that big game hunting tweet at a time when Woodward stock is kind of the lowest that it has been in this entire process, it feels a bit like a shot, dude. I mean, that is some epic trolling from Kiffin there.
Like before I'm like, okay, Louisiana license plate, he's in Louisiana recruiting, okay. The Superdome, I'm like, okay, could that be Sugar Bowl related? But the plane felt a little different just because it was the tagline. It was a tagline that everybody's been using with Scott. So, he might have been trolling like 6 different fan bases. I don't know. That's what Lane does. Lane's fantastic at it.
And he did, so Cam East, who was a 3-star recruit, offensive tackle from, he's actually committed to Mississippi State. But he tweeted yesterday, had a great time, had a great home visit with Lane Kiffin, visiting my family in New Orleans. So he was in New Orleans recruiting.
And by the way, that's a big jet.
It is a big jet.
That's not like the little hopper that you get on to go recruit normally. That's a big one.
I wonder how much Ole Miss is going to pay Lane. We will see. But yeah, I did think that the big game hunting tweet was just like chef's kiss, and maybe a little peek behind the curtain, though we should be very careful about taking any of this too seriously. Matt Flynn responding to our tweet about him, being the noted journalist.
Yeah.
Saying, haha, yep, I'm basically Baton Rouge's Trent Krim. Huh. Look at that.
A little Ted Lasso.
A little Ted Lasso reference from Matt. I did not take Matt as a Ted Lasso fan.
Well, okay, I like the one-liners, yes, but for him to actually sit down and appreciate Ted Lasso, didn't think that would happen.
How about this, Jake? Doug Pederson for LSU?
So I personally have been getting that a lot just because obviously I have still a lot of connections in Shreveport and at Calvary Baptist where he coached. My brother played for him at Calvary Baptist. My brother coaches there now. And so I've been getting a lot of that from up north. Like, hey, what about Doug Pederson? He's got a Super Bowl title. And like, Doug Pederson's a hell of a football coach, but that doesn't seem like something to me that would interest Doug. I mean, he's the second he got a chance to go to the NFL, he bolted.
Yeah.
I mean, ULM, where he played, was open, and, I mean, he didn't, not that he would, but Kerry Bowden got that job. It's not like he didn't put his name in for that. He's an NFL guy to me.
I mean, there's just what is Doug Pederson doing now? Actually, is he
took a year off?
You took a year off? Yeah, I don't think it. I don't know. It feels like kind of a non-starter to me as well. Man, I wonder. Okay, let's talk Stoops real quick then, because I don't believe this, but the accepted thing last week became if it's not going to be Riley, then a lot of people think it's going to be Mark Stoops. Jake, you are not stumping for Stoops, but you have been at least fighting almost like a misinformation battle where as soon as people hear Stoops, they generally tend to fly into a rage.
Yeah.
So what are some of the positives on the potential of a Mark Stoops?
Well, I'm just saying because I have been on the Kentucky bandwagon for 3 years now, and really since 2018 and what they've done there. And I just appreciate the way they built that program. They've gone to 5 straight bowl games. They're going to go to their 6th straight bowl game. And look, I realize LSU is not Kentucky. Even though Kentucky did what they did to LSU on the field, I realize the programs are not the same. But this is someone that has turned Kentucky into a team that when you have them on your schedule now, you get a little nervous. You're like, man, okay, this is a game we know we're going to feel. Like you feel when you play Kentucky now because of the brand of football they play, tough, nasty, physical, all that. But they've beaten Florida, twice in the last 36 years. And he's been the coach for both of those. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just something they didn't do at Kentucky. He beat Florida and LSU in back-to-back weeks. That's just something you don't do at Kentucky. Again, I don't know. I'm not saying bring him here. I'm not saying that I think he would succeed necessarily here. I'm just telling you this is somebody that you've got to give him credit for being a heck of a football coach, for what he was given to what he's turned Kentucky into. Very respectable program. The guy can coach football. I think Oklahoma should be calling him. And if he did end up at LSU, yeah, I would lay out my receipts of what I've been talking about for the last 4 seasons with Mark Stoops. And so that's my point on him, is don't allow him and his record at Kentucky, which, by the way, they've had winning seasons every year basically since they gave him that time. I realize where it started at 2-10, but I just think he's done a hell of a job at Kentucky, and I think that he's somebody that you can appreciate the way he coaches.
I think, too, that if you actually look at so we keep mentioning the last 3 head coaches and won natties, right? If you look at Miles and Saban and O's records before they got to LSU, they were not, they were not the win percentages of like a Brian Kelly, right? Which we went over earlier, which is just like absurd, kind of unthinkable in terms of just win percentage. Like they were good, but they weren't necessarily great. LSU and the combination therein helped to take them to that next level. So I get the idea of Stoops, getting some of that LSU rocket fuel and see what they could do. Now Champ raises a point, Lane Kiffin, so he said Stoops at a mid-level program has mid-level results. Lane Kiffin's at a mid-level program has top-level results in a quarter of the time. That's why Kiffin's a bit exciting because he does seem to be like kind of an offensive wunderkind that is capable of producing over his talent level. But recruiting's the lifeblood of college football. What's Ole Miss right now? Like 30-something in recruiting? And Kentucky's like 13th or 14th. So like there are advantages and disadvantages to everyone, right? It's not always easy to just go 1-1. I don't know if I have anything.
I think,
else to
and
say
honestly,
on the
like
search today.
with a guy like Stoops, and of course, I know this was coming, and it's fine. I'm a big boy. They get to play Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, South Carolina every year, which has been horrible the last 5 to 10 years. Okay, so now we're going to start picking which teams you get to play in the SEC that are bad. I mean, the West 2 years ago was 3 years ago when Ole Miss was bad with Matt Luke, and Arkansas was abysmal. I mean, they were losing to San Jose State, North Texas, Western Kentucky, and Colorado State all at home. Like, he goes in waves. Again, good football coach. Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah, he's a good coach. He's absolutely a good coach. Is he good enough? That's what we'll say.
That'd be a big question. Without question, that would be the narrative for 7 months. And I full disclosure, I don't think it is him.
I don't think that I, at this point, can have any idea who it is. I have no idea. Like, I allowed myself to finally, despite being so hesitant and annoyingly on the fence and non-committal, I too allowed myself to get swept up in the belief that it was Lincoln because I just thought there were enough smart people saying it. So again, we all learn lessons. It's just a continual lesson that no one knows except for Scott, Stephanie Rimp, and I think I've added Austin Thomas. That makes not even AT.
I think it's the
Scott
tightest.
and Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's the tightest search. I mean, I'm telling you, I actively try to you circle around with questions trying to get any info. It's like, no, get out of here.
Let's go Coach Prime. That's what I'm all about. For real though, Matt Rule, just leave Carolina, leave a note in the locker, and come on, let's ride. All right, when we get back, closing out hour number 2, set up hour 3 here on Off the Bench.